Surely.
We're gonna do.
You know what? I say we get started. We do have a hard stop tonight. So we got another meeting. So I say let's jump in. Anybody who comes late can watch the replay. That is the beauty of technology. Felicia, I'm going to let you introduce the beautiful Amy Orton and tell us everything she's going to share with us this evening.
Well, first of all, I want to thank her for taking out the time to come and talk to us. We geek out all the time. So the fact that I get to share her with y'all is like really special to me. So she and I have been acquaintances and friends for quite some time. And she is an amazing UI UX person, has a great business mind. And I wanted her to share this process because I think sometimes we build without this concept. And this is why it's really important because we just think, I'm just going to build it and Tawana will know this. Sometimes we just build without thought. And then that causes problems because you got to re-engineer and do all this stuff. And that leads to tech debt. And that becomes really hard for you to overcome that because now you're wedded to something just because you're paying for it rather than that it's functional for you. So Miss Amy is going to help us get our whole life right about our choices and why we do certain things before rather than after. So tell them all about your grooviness and thanks again for coming.
You are so welcome. I was going to give me a whole speech about thank you for inviting me. Thank you for letting me teach. So the appreciation is vice versa. And you basically highlight a lot of the challenges, not even a percentage of the challenges that come with not really thinking about UX. Now, I do have a presentation that I'm going to share.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. All right, so we're just gonna do Chrome here. Let me know if you can see.
Yes, ma'am.
My screen. Good. All right, so first I want to also make sure I pull up this chat and say hello to those folks who are attending. And I quickly want to, it's going to be a participation thing. It's not going to be me giving you a lecture. I'm going to be asking questions and I can't wait for you guys to answer. So we have, I think we have VT.
That's Miss Vanessa.
Okay, Vanessa, thank you for joining. How many of us are in the tech world?
Well, you have to clarify that because everybody's in the tech world. Everybody uses technology.
Building a product or be a part of the product development or creative conceptualization process. Good, I see you. All right, that's okay if you only got one person. So I'll be talking to maybe a group of us, but also I hope this is giving you a lot of context as to really how we want to start to move in the direction of being UX literate, okay? Or UX maturity, I would like to say. So understanding UX maturity from day one, no matter really where you're at in your product development process or what role you play in that entire process, okay? Really quick, this is me, Amy Orton. I have been doing this for almost 14 years now. I started off as a web designer, graduated college, and was like, I'm gonna start a business doing UI UX. So I started Dream in Color and the UX Clinic. I've been working with startups in the startup space for quite a long time, learning a lot of the shenanigans that happens in the UX process. And I'm basically on a mission to really build UX maturity and making sure that that is a part of the ongoing process of building our technical solution, especially in this day and age. All right, come on now, presentation. Next slide. Okay. Next slide.
You know how this works in Canva.
Girl. All right, so why does it really matter to me? I've been doing a ton. I told you I was featured as a woman in tech at the Web Summit in Lisbon in 2022. I've co-authored a book on digital health and telehealth for people with diabetes. I am also a type 1 diabetic, so I have a very, very, very vested interest in making sure that UI UX, something's in my eye. So if you see me crying, it's not because I'm passionate, it's literally because I got a lash in my eye, but it's okay. I have been featured on several UX platforms, and so I've been doing it. And this is the reason why it all matters to me, is because I'm a type 1 diabetic and I really want humanity tech to be better for those who really need it the most, but not just for humanity tech, for all technology. These are practices that can really range across industries. All right, so what are the main misunderstandings about UX that could lead to significant costs later? Talisha said a lot of it up front, right? So a lot of it sometimes gets skipped. And this is where we want to really start to pay close attention to the early stages of product conceptualization and building, so on and so forth. So a lot of times the misconception is UX, just make it look pretty. Just make it look nice. And that's a huge misconception about the power of UX, okay? UX is not just a thing to make it look beautiful. It really is something that you want to start to do beforehand, before you start the build. Sometimes it can become costly after you develop and push it and launch it and do beta testing, and then you start to think about UX. It becomes so much more financially tasking to revisit what you should have visited in the very beginning, okay? So neglecting user research and user testing, that means like building proper personas. And personas aren't something that you do once, okay? As your product begins to mature, you get to start to ideate, you start to figure out who's investing and what kind of clients you have. Those user personas should change. It is a living and breathing mechanism or tool for your product, okay? Understanding UX role in development. So while you're developing and iterating, UX should really be that filter that you push your thoughts, ideas from client to the UX person to development, okay? Because look at this picture over here on the left-hand side, right? This is what happens when we end up designing based on just what our clients and our investors and what they say. We end up kind of creating a little bit of a monster, with some mechanics gonna have to be like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Okay. So we got to we have to revisit a lot of the functionality and why it's operating that way. And that is where that technical debt starts to ramp up. A lot of people start to ignore the UX process and wait until later on. Like, let's just kind of do it when we get all the engineering and we have our overseas developers doing everything. We'll incorporate that after we get it built. And like I said, that costs so much more. Another thing is assuming UX is a one-time effort. And I said that before when it comes to user personas. You should be iterating in a process with a UX person, with a UX specialist, designer, so on and so forth. All right. Pause. We have any questions? I know I'm screaming at y'all right now because
Also, I think this is the best time for that one-time effort. And this is where a lot of people get caught in that you build everything, right? The whole kitchen sink, like, right, I got 6 doors, 7 things, and you start to build everything because you just think it's a blah, it's the feature vomit. But you don't even take into consideration that it needs to iterate, because you don't need all those things when you first start it. It needs to just function. And the people say, yeah, and it would be nice if I could do this. And that's the next part, right? That's why it needs to kind of move from a one-time. You don't give everything out the box. It has to iterate. Everything has to iterate. And you have to know that in your mind to kind of move through this too, that you're not building this one-shot thing all in its glory. You're building something that functions better and better and better every time you iterate.
Right. And not only that, let's kind of go back to this picture. Oftentimes when we are developing just based on our own criteria, our own assumptions, we build a monster. And like you said, we just keep on adding on and adding on. And then at the end of the day, like, what monster did we create? Okay.
Yeah, because where is the oil pan? How you even change where is the battery? Have, like, I mean, that thing, I could just see it. Like, what happens? What jalopy is that?
And then, this door don't even work.
But
This
it,
middle door,
you said you wanted 6 doors. You got 6 doors. You didn't say they all had to function. See, that's the question right there.
Amy, am I correct that, so, I obviously think I'm one of those people that thinks UI UX is making it pretty. But I also think it's that step to also make it intuitive to the user, right? I think that's the process upon which it all ties together.
So this is where another one of those misconceptions are. UX on the surface makes things intuitive and look pretty, right? But oftentimes when you weave in UX into the way the business operates, it will also teach you how to make and prioritize certain feature choices and decisions. So you need to weave that into the way you're making business choices and how you're prioritizing it.
Okay.
One of the things that I also use, so I have a sort of methodology or a grading scale that allows for UX to really be a part of how do you align everything together. So what are the user's needs? And the user's needs might need to make it pretty, intuitive, make sure that the features meld together and they work together. That's important. But then business alignment also needs to be considered, right? And a lot of times startups don't really understand how the UX really weave into those business metrics, right? So if you're having a high attrition rate or you have a high, you're paying a lot for sort of like UX support or support in general, those things really matter because it tells you that you're really spending a lot more time on the technical support teams. You're spending a lot more time on re-advertising because maybe now we find a misalignment with the users and we're not quite sure how to adapt the user's new needs to the product that we currently have. Okay, so a UX-led company allows for you to process all this data that you're receiving from multifunctional teams, marketing, finance, business, development, and be able to say, okay, here's everything that we're seeing, and here's the best choice to make based on all of these things coming into alignment. I hope that helps to
That does. It's very helpful. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so another misconception is who can afford UX? All right, so I think that is a very short-sighted approach to things, right? So in the startup space, partnering with UX specialists could be a good approach to some of that cost, right? So really quick, misconception about the cost of UX often leads to short-sighted decisions that can drain resources in the long run. Here are a few common misunderstandings. So UX is too expensive, and I just said, consulting is the best approach in the beginning if it's just you and a few engineers. You should always be consulting with the UI UX expert. Some people say, oh, we can skip UX research to save money. Lies. Sorry, I came from the back of the throat. Lies. You should never skip UX. And UX does not need to take 3 years to do. We're in the Internet of Things now. We can use secondary research to validate user experience approaches or user patterns, or maybe even features that really work in a different industry that we can borrow and reuse in your current product. So you should never skip this process because we do need to build user stories, user flows, and user personas. And that also helps you with marketing and sales and development and prioritization on what products need to be done first. And also, if you're in the initial part of it, in the ideation phase, like when you're talking to potential clients, you can have a UX beautiful mock-up to at least test, right? Oftentimes, we're just leaping into developing something. We could start to develop wireframes first, and that will save you money in the long run first. Okay. Good UX doesn't require a specialist. Lies. Please stop hiring your uncles and your aunts who recently used to develop websites and graphic designers. Please. They are not equipped with the tools to solve your business challenges, your marketing challenges, and the feasibility challenges that come up when it comes to engineers. So a lot of times, and I have story time after this, I'll give you a use case where this went awry. Don't hire a graphic designer to solve a UX specialist, solve a problem that a UX specialist should be solving for you, okay? You're never going to save money. There's a thought that it does. I don't know why. And UX is
There is a thought that it does. I am guilty of that. Right. I see I see UX designers as like, I see you in this class up here by yourself, right? And no offense to the graphic designers of the world, but I see them as a level down when I think about expertise. And so if my budget is a level down, then that's who I think can get me where I need to be. I don't think I can get up to that higher level where a UX designer is. So I love that you've made this call out, because I am guilty of that.
No, because they can make it look good. So that we got to start to think about the difference between UI design and UX and graphic design and web design. These are different digital areas, right? Like they're just different things. Like if we think about building a house, right? Who does the engineering? Plumbing, electrical, things like that, right? That's your engineers and your developers. All right, well, who figure out where should the kitchen and, you know, the electrical plugs be at and things like that? That's your UX specialist. And then the surface of that is, what are the FF&Es, the furnitures, the finishes, the drapes, all that stuff? That's UI.
Got it. You just did it for me. That clicked for me. That was a great analogy. You're the architect.
We are the architect, and we're the interior architects.
I got it.
What are some of the other misconceptions? We don't need UX, so prove it. Okay, we said that already. Fast development equals low cost. Lies. You can also reach low cost and move fast. So I think that there's some weird thing where that's a thing. And we can't move forward that way, not in this day and age, okay? Moving from this slide. Oh, wait, I also like this picture. So it's so funny. We design everything, it's cheaper, but then you design everything, it's more expensive. And that is the truth. It is the truth. Okay? All right. A true use case, story time. All right. All right. So I had a client, and Tanisha knows this client already. All right. I felt like this was a perfect client to bring up because I had a client who has thousands of users. Okay. And I was brought on to rescue the product, right, from having to shut down. All right. So this particular client had, we analyzed 2 sets of data. One is from 2021 to 2020, and the other set is from 2020 to recent years, okay? So you'll see this is the before, 2020, this is the after. They had no UX designer, no UX specialist, had one web designer and front-end developer. 2 years ago, they made an update to the platform. I think they made an update to 2020, 2021, and 2022. They made an update, okay? They also release new features every 2 weeks with no UX designer and only a web designer, okay? So long story short is, before, their attrition rate was 51. That is not great at all to start at that place, where you're losing 51 of your clients between the times of 2015, 2020. Now, moving beyond 2020 to recent years, they increased their attrition 72.9%. So they end up losing more of their customers. After all of this design, after all of this work, after all of these launches of new features, and they can't figure out, well, why are we still losing clients? We're solving the design needs with our web designer. They brought me on. I had the ability to talk to the UI UX to the designer, me as a UI UX expert, and be able to break down some of what is the formula for them to start making these changes sooner rather than later. Now, this is not a happily ever after story, because after they actually shut me down because they ran out of funds. All right, so I couldn't even come and rescue that particular project because everything changed, management changed, everything. And so the long story short, they have been using a web designer since 2013, all the way up to 2024. And still didn't know their user personas, still couldn't understand why people were leaving. And I had to end up giving them a diagnostic review and some designs to solve a specific challenge. But the product now is design UX designer, no UI UX designer is there to help save this particular product. So that's my little bit of story time and why it's so important to think about UX in the very beginning and stop waiting. It's not a game. You can lose thousands and thousands of dollars. All right. All right. Now, let's talk about why UX maturity is significant and what steps can be taken to move forward effectively. All right. So what is UX maturity? So UX maturity is a model that the Nielsen Norman Group coined, right? Now, they put together, the Nielsen Norman Group is the UX research firm. Like, they put together all of these criterias basically to help tech startups to become more UX mature. As I was working and talking with Talisha Shine here, I started realizing that UX maturity, instead of trying to work backwards, so their UX maturity model was trying to get mature companies to better enhance their UX maturity. Why not start with startups? Why not start with people who are just starting their product development process or just starting an idea? Why not engrave those principles early on so that the founders, the product managers, the engineers are all UX mature, that they're all UX natives, that they understand how to think. Even if you don't have a designer, when you hire one, you understand the thought process and the tools and the process that your UX person should be doing in order to give you the results that you need. And oftentimes that means you need to know what results you need, like your business metrics, what changes that you need to have, what changes you need in order to make the business operate, but also make your users happy and be able to lower the feasibility, okay? All right, that was a mouthful. Okay. So at this moment, I'm gonna need you guys to join this. So I want everybody to assess their UX maturity, okay? So I'm just gonna go up. UX maturity is 1, absent, 2, limited, 3, emergent, 4, structured, 5, integrated, 6, user-driven. Now, many people don't get past the 3. So if you say I'm 2, 3, we on the average right here. A lot of our companies that are in 4 and 5 are places like Amazon and Spotify, some of these big tech companies. This is when they start to really take UX seriously and have better processes as they acquire the funds, right? So I'm gonna pause. Brenda, Dale, Diane, Kimberly, Rain, let y'all answer where you believe your UX maturity levels are. I can't see the chat.
No, Diane says absent. I think we all fall into that. It's easy to
Absent, 1.
absent to heart. You don't think about it. It's one of those things that are really, it's hard to conceptualize, specifically when you're building. You just, again, you're going from, I'm a one-man shop, I'm doing my ideation, I'm doing the validation, I just need to produce something. So you really, if you don't have the skill, it's not getting done.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Okay. And that's okay. At least you know exactly where you are.
Mhm.
So knowing where you are and knowing where it is that you could go is a part of like diagnosing your problem, right? We go to a therapist to ask them to fix our thinking, and they tell us the things that we need to fix, right? And that's what a UX person really does. They tell you where the challenges are, not just from the product level, but the infrastructure of your team and how they operate and how the system of getting feedback and making changes should be when you have UX leadership in your company. And oftentimes, if you're starting out, it doesn't have to cost that much. Okay. Thank you guys for participating.
love how
I
Rain
think
said
it's
this is the first-
interesting that Rain said this was the first time that he's hearing about the word UX. And, I've obviously heard the term before, but I'll be honest, I don't know that I knew before tonight how important it was. Like
Good.
I really, really did not. So this is so helpful to really help, to really help think about growing a business. You really have to build it right from the beginning, but it's not just building it, it's having the right people help you build it. And
Yes.
and not knowing is definitely a limit that we can't afford, especially small Black businesses. We can't afford to mess this up because we don't have a lot of do-over money.
No.
Mm.
And so I think it's important to get the right specialists or the right consultants on board when you're building technology. And there's a difference, though, when working with something like a venture studio accelerator incubator and working independent from those, is that the venture studios, the incubator, they give you the knowledge to learn what you need. They're not necessarily championing you to integrate that into the process, though, right? They still have some work to do when it comes to like where to use UX and how is it done and when to put it into the ideation validation process. But when it comes to startups doing it on your own, the best thing to do is to look for people who can help you solve those challenges when it comes to UI, UX, and business as well. Okay. All right. So let's move forward. Dang, it's crazy you haven't heard about UX before. I'm happy that I came today. All right, you guys, now that you've heard everything that I've had to say, we are going to start to think about where UX maturity and leadership supports, like where's it best to support. That's not the question. UX maturity and leadership supports in which stages, right? So there's the idea phase, the conceptual phase, the development phase, the launch phase, the growth phase, the maturity phase, the support phase, and which is ongoing. So where does UX truly fit? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7? I also had coffee today. So
How many cups have you had? Not just that you have coffee. You drink coffee every day.
I do. I had more.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Where do we think UX? Oh, I don't know. That's one. Ryan, where do you think? I mean, just as a high level guess. Make a guess.
I would say based on what we've talked about, that you need to be introduced in the idea phase.
Okay, we'll take one as the idea phase. Okay. So where does UX support? Which stage could UX really support? I honestly, launch, yes. Launch is a good one. Okay. I don't know launch. All right, well, guess what? It really supports all the phases. So, all right. So the idea phase, when you're conceptualizing, there are plenty of tasks that need to be done in that idea phase, right? There is finding market fit and doing market research. There is understanding the user, doing user interviews, developing personas, right? Getting all of these things documented, not just to have documentation, but also to get in alignment, because in that idea phase, you want to start to do a few different things. You want to see who's going to invest, right? Like, who's going to give me money to build this thing? Do I have to put a lot more money up front? And how do I do that? How do I communicate the concept well? And what you can do in the idea phase is rough wireframes, right? And sketches and building up an understanding of who you're targeting. And based on that, like break down what their goals are as a user, break down their challenges, and break down their motivations as a user, as a participant, right, in your product. Idea phase is where UX supports. Conceptualization phase is where everybody thinks, right? Make it pretty and, you know, design it, do the user flows, get the information architecture going. That's where UX really sometimes stays and gets stuck in that sort of phase. When it comes to development, this is where the developers usually take that idea, take the concept, take the deliverables and engineer, but they never revisit a designer. What you should be doing is when you start to engineer, the QA needs to be done both by the QA person, but also there should be a design QA expert there saying like, this is not functioning or this is functioning the way that it is intended for the user. So you need a user advocate in that development phase. Launching, right? This is where you start beta testing. This is where user testing comes into play. This is where you get someone who is recording metrics of, you know, what are people clicking? What aren't people clicking? What kind of like support tickets are we receiving? Is it around UX or are they well educated? Do we need to add documentation? There's all of these different things that really are important when UX is in that sort of testing phase. Growth, strategy. Anytime you're thinking about, all right, something's working here, where are we going next? You want to have your UX expert at the table to say, hey, here's what's been working, but based on the testing, here's where I think we can grow. If you think like we can do that, how can we build in a place where we understand the problem for the user and who they are and what they might need? That's where your UX becomes that advocate. Maturity phase, you start to really think about the system in your company for solving problems fast. This is where you start to systemize UX. All right, we have a product, we're growing the product, we're having conversations about the product. Now, how do we make sure that we keep it nice and tight and that we're not spending too much money or spending too many resources doing something that may not matter to the business and to the user? So maturity-wise is really building that system for UX. Put UX leadership here, put a US director here, put this UX person here throughout the company so that you know how to nurture your product. Support is just basically creating a design system at the end of all of that, right? So support is now we need to develop feasible systems. So component libraries, design system, interaction libraries, so that you have components to move fast anytime the market shifts, okay? So that's how UX truly should be used in all phases, okay? All right. Another fun thing to do. All right, so the UX mindset. Adjust your mindset to give your product a better chance, especially if you're in the early stages, right? So this is a little bit of a activity. Is you're supposed to connect what the problem is to the definition, right? The problem is, the product is, the solution is, and where does it go? So it's kind of like drawing a line between, I never am really good at explaining the activity, but bear with me. The problem is, and then the definition of what the problem is. Okay. So do we think the problem is the user / participants, the technology, the obstacles faced within the industry?
I think the obstacles faced within the industry.
Okay. Anybody else? We could do 1, 2, or 3.
We'll go with 3.
I'm going with 3. You got 2 for 3. Rain says 1. The problem is the user. Okay. 1, okay. All right. So the problem is the obstacles faced within the industry. Okay. So you are right. You were right, Ms. Tawana. Here's why. The problem, understanding what the problem is going to be based on your market's challenges, like what the industry is saying. So this is where you do your studying on what's happening in the market, what changes are going to happen. That's the problem that needs to be solved, right? All right, so moving on to the next. The product is the user / participant. The product is the technology. Which one? 1 or 2?
I think 1.
Okay. The product is the user participant. Oh no, okay. See you later.
Miss Vanessa.
Bye, Vanessa.
Okay. So you think it's the user and the participant. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tawana. Anybody else?
Agreed.
Okay. 1. Okay. You're right. The product is the user / participant. Let's take a moment and think about that. Because oftentimes when you're working in, a product development company, they would assume that the product is the technology. Why am I doing this then? If it's not the technology, if that's not the product, what am I doing? And that's the lies. The product is the user. The user makes us have a product. Who are we engineering to? So when we start to shift our mindset and start to think like, our product is our users, we spend more time studying our users, wouldn't we?
Right.
Yeah. That's what we'll do. All right. And the solution is the technology, y'all. We bring the solution to the problem for the product. That's it.
Yep, and it could be anything. I think that's the point. You don't lead with the technology because you don't know what the problem is or what the product wants. So you can pick. That's how I kind of think of the tech is plug and play. You never start with it, you end with it. It's like what you're going to do at the end of it, at the process.
But some people really prioritize the technology.
I think we're gleaned to think of like technology as the be all end all, and people
the fixer for everything, right?
I mean, say it's the where you start. It's like, oh, now we have this cool tool. Let me see if I can fix a problem somewhere. So you're going around with a hammer looking for some nails when you don't even know if you need a hammer. You just have one at your disposal.
Yep. Yeah. And oftentimes product companies get so attached to like, how can I rinse and reuse my product that I already developed? How can I make it fit for this problem and do for, and this and that, right? So I think that just changing, first of all, our mindset and being married to the fact that our product is our user, it lowers that like anxiety of like, what do I need to build? What am I solving for? Your product will tell you what it needs. Okay.
Yeah, we see that misconception a lot when there's emerging tech, right? I remember when blockchain was the buzzword. Everybody had, well, I'm gonna use a blockchain. That you don't need a blockchain for what you're doing. And now we see that same thing with AI. It's like everybody and grandmother using AI for everything. I want to tie my shoe. I'm gonna get AI to do it. Like AI don't need to help you tie your shoe. You gotta learn that on your own, right? You need.
And if it does, we need to talk to somebody. You really need to talk to somebody if you.
Like you hear people associating the product with the tech all the time.
Right, exactly. And it's backwards. Even though we've been think that is the way of doing it, it makes no sense. And also it makes it so that we don't think about how do we prioritize the user advocate or the participant advocate. How do we budget for it? Even those who get millions and millions and millions of dollars for their tools and solutions, they do not budget for UX. Wow. It's a very weird thing. They may budget for the design, but it's not fully ingrained in the process, right? And that's where you want to get to a 5 or a 6 level of UX maturity, because that's where you really start buzzing. That's where you start getting the clients. That's where you start. Okay?
Okay, I hear you.
All right. Sorry, you guys. I get passionate about this.
Listen, I'm picking up what you're putting down, so that's what's up.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about AI. AI and AI. AI, artificial intelligence, and accelerated innovation, right? Now is the ideal moment to transform your approach to technical development by embracing experimentation with UX leadership, ensuring that you stay ahead of the era of AI-driven innovation. Like you said before, people are using this to AI for everything. It's not always like the best thing. It doesn't always match the need, right? Like everybody has a little, like everybody else sees the AI icon that's everywhere, everywhere. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful add-on, but where else are we going with this, right? We recently have hovering, flying vehicles now that can, being tested to elevate above the city and bring us here and there. We have Tesla putting out robots to help people take care of their kids and stuff. So all of this needs to be thought about, but it's about creativity and about how do we innovate on ideas that are already there. And you can't do that just based on a bunch of engineers and, a web designer. You really do need someone who can say, hey, there's an opportunity to adapt this, that, and the third, okay? So how do we move fast and stay cost efficient? Because it's easy to fail faster now with AI. But it's easier to move fast and fail faster and run out of ideas if it's not really thought through, right? So there are a few things that you want to consider when you're thinking about innovating in the space, in this era of innovation. Everybody's ready for change now. Everybody's ready for new ideas, but you really want to start to think about user-centered product strategy. That UI UX person comes in and they provide an ability to give you perspective on your product, which is your user. And then you can solve those problems. Defining requirements and features. No one does that better than a UX person to define and help to really draft those user stories to be more efficient. Prioritizing work in general, meaning what features gets launched, what's more important. A UX person understands what the priorities of the business is, what the priority of the user is, and then also what is feasible, because we literally have to have our arms in all of it and truly to understand everything about, building a product. We have to understand everything. UX research and validation, that should be on constant loop. The moment that you say, hey, I got a new product idea or a new feature, that should go through the process of a UX designer, really figuring out how to bring that into the system, to integrate that back into the tool or solution, right? A lot of times features are built in silos and they're never connected. And there's a lot of things that aren't consistent. And when you have inconsistencies in the product, you have inconsistency in performance and user usage, okay? Collaborating with development teams. UX people know how to do that. That's what we've been raised and groomed to do, is how do we communicate what we found to the engineers, to the business unit? It is something that we know. It's not always used, which is so strange, okay? And then that continuous improvement. And that goes from like, how do we make the process faster? When we have a really great UX process, things go fast because you're solving specific challenges as they arise and it's never delayed, right? Because we are constantly looking at the performance metrics of the product, okay? And this is when we get to a more mature level, right? When you have the feedback and things like that. All right. So what is the UX Clinic? So recently I've launched the UX Clinic. The UX Clinic is basically a marketplace where you can purchase these deliverables at a fair cost, okay? So it allows for us, really the mission of the UX Clinic is to help startups and venture studios succeed through strategic design by empowering them to fully embrace the culture of UX, right? It's time to become, in this day and age, with technology being at a revolutionary place, we need to start thinking more strategically about how we change technology. And UX experts do that on the day-to-day basis, right? Product developers and product managers and PMs, they're great at organizing it, but oftentimes that needs to be paired with a great UX expert to help facilitate the vision of the PM or the vision of the product owner and the vision of the company. All right. And so I think that those are, that's the reason why UX Clinic really exists. I'm supposed to wrap up at 45, but all right. So whether you're in an accelerator, incubator, or venture studio, or if you're self-funding your product or solution, the UX Clinic is basically a way for you to shop. All right. Shop for what it is that you need. And understanding it's broken down by the deliverables and by what it is that you need at the point of your product, at the phase of the product. So if you're in the ideation, you're probably going to need something like building your user persona and really having facts to back up that user persona. So we have things that are priced really efficiently so that you're not ever breaking the bank when you're thinking about your product or solution, or you're building it, or you're needing deliverables, okay? We also have something called the UI Collab. And UI Collab is basically purchasing sessions with a design strategist or a UX strategist to help you really think about your product, bounce out the ideas back and forth, maybe even have a quick UX audit on your designs so that we can tell you, your goal is this, but you're doing that. I would actually make that change there. In my sessions, usually I'm moving components around in my clients' designs, and I'm telling them where they need to go, right? So there's a 60-minute and a 90-minute. So they're literally workshops hands-on, okay? All right. Right. The benefits of the UX Clinic: streamlined process and project management. The UX Clinic is really what you need when you need it. And in the UX Clinic, we break down things by what you need as a business, not just the deliverables, but what it will help you do in your business when you get these deliverables. When you get a UX, a product, where you get a wireframe or a mock-up, or converting your product requirements into a user testing plan. It tells you how this facilitates you and your company from a business place. So now you're understanding a lot of the, you understand a lot more of the UX maturity and the UX native approach to building your startup. Cost efficiency, that was pretty simple, right? You save money by starting with UX. And of course, using the UX Clinic, it's discounted. It's one of those things that's really for solopreneurs who are just working things, trying to get their product working. All right, so we're talking a lot. All right, so then help you prioritize and find alignment with your users' needs, business needs, and feasibility, okay? All of the UX experts know how to communicate with your engineers and tell them how and what needs to be built, okay? It also will help you align with your business needs, because we have criteria that every user story has to check a box of high feasibility or low feasibility, high user need, high business value, okay? So that's the way that you should be grading what's most important for your business and your users. If you know that the user is going to need this, and you know that it's going to give you a high business value to produce it, and the feasibility is low, that's the first thing you need to do. That's a feature you need to integrate in your MVP, okay? Structured deliverables. Why are we designing things? Why are we developing things? The structure comes from the fact that there is a process for each one of these deliverables. and you will understand it, and you will be able to regurgitate that as you begin to grow and nurture your business. Increase adaptability and market fit. UX, we all know that UX is a really big portion, a really big part of increasing your ability to adapt faster and for market fit. Improve business building proficiency. We talked about that, right? Become a UX thinker, a UX thinking startup in the age of technical innovation. I mean, ultimately, that is the idea, that users are not going to be called users. We talked about this, me and Talisha talked about this terminologies. Users aren't users anymore. They're participants. They participate with your tool or solution. This is not from me. This is Miss Talisha Shine. She says she don't like the users.
No, it makes you sound like an addict. You're a user. Like that's
But we're not using, we're participating. We participate in technology. And now more than ever, people are participating with technology in a more tangible way. So yeah. Whew, Jesus, that's it. All right. Good. So
I put it in the chat for them too, so they can click on the hyperlink right there.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
Oh, nice.
If you guys want to connect with me on LinkedIn, it really is just Amy Otten on LinkedIn. I don't know if I could just grab that.
and I will tell you, her 60 and 90-minute sessions are so deep diving. Like when she tells you, it's amazing, because you think you're like, oh, we're just gonna hit the wave tops. She can tell you, like, she can pinpoint it with such accuracy where those things are, because again, she does this all the time. But I think what happens is too, we get so focused on it. You have a design in your mind, like you come to it with like, I know what I think it's supposed to look like. And that what's harmed you, because you're not wed to the product, you're wed to the solution. So it's like that little thing, but she's able to show you like that connection in a very small amount of time. She gets you there all together very quickly.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I'll, again, being completely transparent, I've never even approached my solution with I have it in mind. It's been, you're the graphic designer, you know what this is supposed to look out, go forth and conquer, right? So that's probably even worse than not having it in mind, because I'm really taking somebody's opinion that's not a specialty, that's not a specialist in the field, and that doesn't know my product like I know my product. So I've delegated all responsibility on something so important and didn't realize that I was making a big mistake.
Yep. I mean, the best thing to do is, even when is just find consultants. Like, you don't need to just and also research. Like, you can Google, what is a web designer? What is a graphic designer? What kind of designer do I need for product design? We can use AI for that. Okay. It helps us with a lot of these type of things. But I'm so happy to, if there's not any questions at all, I'll pause for a second there. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Even if you do, you can always contact me on LinkedIn. And you can reach out to me on the UX Clinic. There also, you can schedule 15-minute consultations with me just to talk me through what you're working on. Talisha is on there as well. You'll see as we go to the About section, Talisha is there.
Y'all wrote me into these things.
I always rope you in, because Talisha she's also that expert. She provides great knowledge as well. And I'm so happy that she invited me here to talk about this. And I don't know, I'm so grateful to you guys.
I love it. Diana said, this is over my head, but now I will think differently. I love that, Diana.
Yes. Even if it's over your head, eventually it lands somewhere.
Well, the best part about it, you don't have to be the expert. You just need to know that you need an expert. Sometimes it's just that you know that you need the help. You're not supposed to do this. You know, like I always say, I'm not a UX person. My daughter actually interned with Amy, because my daughter's a UX person, and they have that whole top. And I say, I'm never going to be them. I don't get it. I don't understand. I understand that I need them. So when I have those questions come up, like, should I consider this, or where am I falling short? those are the people that I go to. So I don't expect to ever have skill set, but at least I have the persons who have the skill set at my disposal.
Yeah, if anybody's ever talking about, hey, I'm trying to build this product, I have a product idea, you have the ability to say, hey, I know somebody who could probably help you with that. And I use a lot of worksheets and a lot of like frameworks that I've built from my years of experience. I didn't put it all in here. It would be like a 2-hour meeting, but there was just like a lot of details that I put in my frameworks, and it really helps to explain things, and it provides a step-by-step process of how it should work and how you should really be thinking about UX when it comes to product development and the build in general. Okay.
Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate
Thank you so very much for coming and spending your time with us this evening. To everyone who joined us live, thank you. For everyone watching the replay, please, if you are a business owner starting out or even established, and you know you need a bit of facelift on your tech, right? You want to reach out to Amy. Amy, thank you so much, my dear.
Thank you, guys.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and everyone, you as well. Dale Bryan, I see you in here. Dale Bryan, I've been trying to email you. I need you to email me.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh,
That's
somebody's in
mama talking. I
trouble.
need you to email me.
I've
You
been
in
trying to
trouble.
email. I've been emailing Dale Bryan for a month now.
Dale.
Dale, right.
I want to say that one. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Everyone,
great
have a good evening.
Oh, they're going to
Oh, he's
email.
giving me his new.
New
See, I
email.
don't think that's the email I'm using, Dale. Hold on, let me grab it.
Oh.
Let me
Don't put
grab
me in
it.
trouble. Like, yeah, that's a good one. Don't get all in trouble before you even know.
Listen, I didn't do it.
Yeah, we are. It wasn't me. It wasn't.
Wasn't me, it was Dale.
Right. I got it.
Like, that's it. Is it?
Dale.
Thank you again. Good night, everybody.
Night. Night.